You're listening to an audio recording by Change My Relationship, featuring licensed marriage and family therapist and author Karla Downing. These audios are designed to provide you with practical solutions based on biblical truths for all your relationships.
I got here by being raised in an alcoholic home where my dad was also abusive, mostly to my mother, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, sexually, financially. It was a very, very violent home with a lot of things going on that were not okay. And my mom was a Christian, and only thing she defied my dad on is she brought us to church every Sunday. She brought us to Bible school, vacation Bible school every summer. She taught Sunday school. And other than that, she was a teacher. So she says that was her ability to get out and have a different mindset. But she stayed with my father. He got sober when I was 17 in AA. And he stayed sober until he died at 96 this past September. So that was really cool. So that was my introduction to recovery programs. So I got into Al-Anon in my mid-20s and spent a lot of years in Al-Anon, and which is where I learned a lot of what I teach and the valuable principles that we all use in our recovery programs and in our lives. And I should say, then of course I married my husband in church at 20, just at the wise old age of 20, of being able to carefully select the right mate for life, and knowing nothing about dysfunction, knowing nothing about dysfunctional families, because back then we knew very little. They really weren't talked about. It's not like today. And so we ended up having a very dysfunctional marriage, gone through it a lot. We are still together after 44 years. It's not perfect, but it has gotten better. And it's where I learned a lot of what I teach, which is God's redemptive grace. And then I've had children that have had difficulties with mental illness and addiction, and I have family members who still are in the throes of addiction. So I have a lot to teach you. I give you a very detailed handout so that you can take it home with you and you don't have to worry about furiously writing down. Everything that I'm going to say is going to apply to any and every difficult relationship, whether it's a marriage, an adult child, a parent, a friend, a sibling, an ex-spouse, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They are tools, tips that you can use to pull out of like a tool bag, which is like I like to equip people with kind of a tool bag of what can I do? I mean, there's so many dynamics in difficult relationships. There are so many situations that are complex that you are facing, and you've got to have some tools to use. What do I do here? What are my choices? What are my options? And that's what I love to do. And I'm just going to give you 16 today, but they cover quite a bit, and I think you're going to really like them. And then we're going to have a question time afterwards. So if you have a question, just jot it down somewhere so you won't forget it. So what I start with always is a foundation of scriptural truths, and my own personal experience, and with working with thousands by now of people, Christians in difficult relationships. Christians they have misunderstandings. They get us in trouble because they cause us to have to react in ways that are not healthy for us and not healthy for the other person. So we're just going to go over quickly 3 of them. And the first common misunderstanding is that you always have to put other people first. We hear things from the pulpit like lay down your life and love one another and put the other one before you. And we pull out this misunderstanding that it's selfish to put myself first. Well, do you know that one of the 5 main dysfunctional rules in a dysfunctional family is don't be selfish? And being selfish means you're taking care of yourself. So don't take care of yourself. It's wrong to take care of yourself. That's one of those dysfunctional rules. Now we get that in church. This is not good for us because it is not true. You do not, and I'm going to say cannot, always put other people before yourself. You cannot do that. you need to balance taking care of your needs and other people's needs that are your responsibility, like small children, right? The obligations you have to your spouse, but you have to balance those. The scripture in the Bible, Ephesians 5:28-29 says, in this same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. After all, no one ever hated their own body. No one ever hated their own body. Listen to that. But they feed and care for their body, just like Christ does the church. He's telling men, okay, I'm going to tell you how to take care of your lives. I'm going to tell you how to love your wives. Okay, you know how you take care of your own self? Now just take care of her like that. We talk about it all the time, but we miss a point. What is the point we're missing? He's saying it's normal, essential, and okay to take care of your own body. He's saying, of course you do that. Now, we're body, soul, and spirit. Of course you take care of yourself. How could you live without taking care of yourself? They tell you when you get on a plane, put the oxygen mask on yourself first. Why? So you'll be okay to help other people. Yeah. That's the same thing in your own life. If you don't take care of yourself, you're going to burn out. You're not going to be able to do what you need to do for other people. You're not going to be able to do your life, your job. You cannot. You go to the grocery store and there's somebody behind you with two things and you've got a basket full. I've done this. Oh, you can go in front of me. Oh, you can go in front of me. And you know what happens? The clerk at the register says to me, stop doing that. You can go. It's okay. People literally will. I did it in a See's candy store. Same thing. I had 7 custom boxes. And finally, the lady behind there, she said, you are not letting anybody else go in front of you. You are going next. You have a right to be served, and you never know what the person behind you is going to have that's going to take a long time. She said, you're next. Even other people realize it, right? You got to take care of yourself. It's okay, it's essential, it's normal, and it's not unscriptural to take care of yourself. Does that make sense? So if you have any question in your mind of whether you can take care of yourself, the answer is yes, yes, yes. Now, if you were only taking care of yourself, you'd be over here, you'd be a narcissist. Okay? If you're only taking care of other people, you're over here, you're super, super, super codependent, and you're not doing what you need to be doing. You need to be here. Okay? The next one is love tolerates mistreatment. We think as Christians, okay, Christ laid down his life, right? He let people mistreat him. Oh, Paul let people mistreat him. We're told to love our enemies. We're told to do all these things in the Bible, and that means we got to accept mistreatment. No, we do not. Love does not tolerate mistreatment. My favorite verse, love does no harm to its neighbor. Romans 13:10. Who did Jesus say we were to love as our neighbor? Ourselves, right? We are to love ourselves as our neighbor. That means love does no harm to the other person or to us. Now, what kind of love do you have? Do you have a love that enables wrongdoing? That hurts the other person. Do you have a love that hurts yourself? For instance, you give away so much money to your child that you can't pay your own bills. That hurts yourself. That's not a love. That's an enabling love. Okay, you've got to look at that and you've got to say, my love cannot do harm to me or to the other person, and I add to the relationship. Because if love is harming your relationship, if you're tolerating things that are wrong for the other person, that's not loving, harmful to you, not loving to you, and harmful to the relationship, meaning it's not fighting for the good or the health of the relationship, do you have a biblical love? No. Does God have that kind of love? Does God tolerate wrong? Does God enable sin? No. So love does not tolerate mistreatment, especially in relationships. No, if we do that in relationships, do we fix the relationship? No, it does not. The next one, you cannot stand up for your rights. You can choose to stand up for your rights. As a Christian, when somebody wrongs you, do you have to lay down all your rights? Are you allowed to go to court? Are you allowed to make that person accountable? Can you fire that employee? Can you ask for that money back? Can you? Are you allowed to do that? This is scripture. It says, but Paul said to the officers, they beat us publicly without a trial, even though we are Roman citizens, and threw us into prison. And now do they want to get rid of us quietly? No way. Let them come themselves and escort us out. What was Paul doing? He was in prison wrongfully. He was a Roman. They could not do that to him. He said, I cannot be held here. I need to be let go. And I'm not going quietly. You can wake the district attorney up or the judge up or the head of the prisons, and I'll just sit here, get him out of bed, tell him to come down here, tell him to walk us out, and know what they did. Okay? Yeah. You can stand up for your rights if it's the right thing, if it's for the best interest of the other person, if it's in the best interest of the situation, if it stands up for the gospel. Sometimes you lay down your rights, okay? Sometimes you say, you know what? For my witness to this person in this situation, I'm going to not assert my rights. Apostle Paul told us in Corinthians, when the Christians were taking each other to court over stupid things, he said, stop it. It's a bad witness. They could have resolved those things within the church. Instead, they took them to the outside courts. They were new Christians at a time when Christ just left. And Paul said, in this case, come on. I'd just rather you eat it and you be wronged than I would that you take this stuff outside to the courts, and that's the witness you're showing the world of the church. In that case, just suck it up, is what he was saying. Or resolve it in here amongst us. Good example, right? And the Apostle Paul didn't take his money that he could have, just like a pastor now is paid by the church. Apostle Paul ministering to them, he said, I could have taken money from you and had you support me, but I decided not to. I decided to lay down my right to that money so that nothing would hinder my witness to you. Nothing would hinder my witness, right? He did not want them to be paying him. For some reason, he felt like if he did, that would hurt his witness. So he worked on the side anyway. So this is a decision. You get to choose to lay down a right, or you get to assert a right. Scripturally, okay? All right, so I could go on and on about those, but you'd have to take my classes or buy my books to get more. Okay, so the next one. Number 2, change yourself, not the other person. Super fundamental. Although in difficult relationships, what's the main thing we want to do? Change the other person. Is our change that we desire wrong? Usually not. I rarely hear anyone bring up something that is not a reasonable change in somebody who is doing things that are unhealthy and not okay. Okay, so it's not wrong, but here's the problem. You can't force anybody to change. Each of us is going to give an account of ourselves to God, Romans 14:12. Each of us is going to have to account. And I think I used to think in the beginning of my marriage, well, when I get there, I'll just explain he was really difficult. And everything I did wrong was because of him, right? I would have been a much calmer person. I wouldn't have been a crazy maniac at times. I wouldn't have been cranky with my kids if only I had just had this great marriage, right? Nope. I'm going to give an account of me and how I responded to the situations that came into my life. I'm going to give an account of how I did. So I got to work on me. And besides, I want my life to be as peaceful and healthy as possible in spite of the people that are difficult in my life. So first thing you have to do is you have to admit how your life is unmanageable when you try to force people to change. And that is step one. That is admitting that we're powerless over alcohol or whatever, other people, places, things, and admitting that our life is unmanageable, recognizing it's not so good when I put all my energy into forcing this person to change. Me, when I do that, I get a bit obsessive. I get a bit crazy. I get a bit too vocal, okay? Too many words. I get too intense, right? I don't let it go. I can't focus on my work. I get thinking about it all the time. It's not good. That's unmanageability for me. And I don't like to live in unmanageability because I have lived with having my life manageable, and I like it a whole lot better. So when we try to force them to change, we look at it and we say, what's happening? What's going on in my life? That's not good when I try to force this change. So the next one is to admit powerlessness. And powerlessness means powerless or no power. So when I tried to blow dry my hair today, it right now would be really thin and not looking as good as it does, if you think it looks good, if I did not have a blow dryer with power. Okay, you cannot put in a drill with a power drill if there's no power. You are going, or a screw, you're going to end up not being able to put that in. It's an either or. Okay, so powerless means you don't have enough power to make someone to change. Somebody who doesn't want to change won't change. Right. And all the energy that we use in trying to get that person to change is wasted. But you know why we do it? Because we don't like the alternative. And the alternative is figure out how to live in the midst of this, which usually involves setting some kind of boundary. And we don't want to. We don't want to accept that that's the way it is. We don't want to have to set boundaries with that. So we push really hard to get people to change. If I can only convince my husband or my child or my wife to quit drinking, quit using drugs, quit watching porn, then the problem's over. Then I don't have to figure out how to respond to this. I wouldn't have to figure out what boundary to set with this. I'll just change them. It doesn't work. Okay, if they want to change, when you set your boundary or you let them know what isn't okay, they'll change because they want to. But all of that effort of trying to force change is wasted energy, wasted time, and honestly, if you're like me, it can make you a bit crazy, right? A bit unmanageable. And then the last thing to do with that is to change yourself. How do you change yourself? We don't change ourselves to please or appease people. We don't change ourselves so the other person will change. We change ourselves because that's healthy. We change what we need to change in the way that we're responding to the situation. Okay, I don't, with the problems that I've had with my daughters, with my husband, with family members, I don't want to be yelling at them and saying things that I regret. I don't want to lose it with them. With my mom, who enables family members because she's old and she's always done that, right? She's not going to change. I can't change her, but I don't want to mistreat her over that. I don't want to do things that I don't feel good about. So I don't change myself to appease or please. I change myself because I need to change my response and because I need to change the things in myself that are not okay. The things in myself that I know cause further problems in my relationship, that make the situation worse, that do not help. Those are the things that I want to change. I want to keep my side of the street clean. I want to work on my part. And I want to be healthy in the midst of dysfunction. I can't force the other person to change. You can't force your mother or your father to be any different when you visit them. But you want to be able to respond in a healthy way, right? That's why you change yourself. And there's a lot to change when you live with dysfunction, when you grow up with dysfunction, when you've lived a life with a lot of unhealthy habits. There's a lot to work on, so you won't be bored. Promise you. You have plenty to do. The third one is face your fears. Okay. David said, when I am afraid, I will put my trust in you. I disagree with a lot of preachers, pastors, teachers who say it's a sin to be afraid. We can't help but be afraid. Fear is a natural response to danger. It's a protective, instinctual response that we feel. It is a warning sign, right? Warning that something is coming up or there's something wrong that you need to attend to. So when you feel fear, you need to ask what it is, right? And you need to figure out, is there any truth to this? Is there anything that I need to attend to? Or how do I handle this? Well, why would you, and then you trust God. You trust God with the outcome, okay? But you pay attention to the fear. If you think it's a sin, you're going to go, oh, stop being afraid. Don't be afraid. And instead I say, ooh, what am I afraid of? What's going on? What do I need to pay attention to? And then figure that out. That's an important question. So with people, what are you afraid of? A lot of times we're afraid of their response when we're dealing with them. If we're speaking truth or setting a boundary or dealing with them, we're afraid of what they're going to say, how they're going to say it. They're going to be mad at us. They're going to quit talking to us. They're going to cut off the relationship. Our children aren't going to love us. They threaten to never see us again. And sometimes you're like, I hope so. But you'll be back sooner than I want you to. I've seen it before, right? I had a friend who used to call me and he said he's never going to ever see me again. I said, enjoy the time. Because he is going to be back and the problems will still be there. And he always came back. And so did my kids. So, all right. So, and then we want to face our fear of the outcome. There's a lot of potential things that could happen in difficult relationships when people are doing things that aren't healthy. And we're afraid of those things and we don't like those things and we don't want those things. Who wants to have a divorce? Who wants to have a child who ends up getting kicked out of your house? Who ends up getting kicked out of their apartment? Who wants to have a parent who doesn't talk to you or cuts you off? Nobody. Nobody wants that. We are afraid of the outcome. It's okay to not like a negative outcome, but you allow your fear of any of those things to keep you from doing what's right. And that's the important thing, is to pay attention. What am I afraid of? Why am I afraid of that? Okay, do I need to attend to any of that? And what should I do in spite of my fear? How do I stand up for what is right, what is truthful, what is healthy, in spite of that fear? That's where you trust the Lord and you say, I'm going to stand up for what's right. I'm going to do that in spite of my fear. And that's how you handle fear when you're in with a difficult person, whatever that fear is. The fourth one, speak the truth in love. And Ephesians 4:15 says, instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become in every respect the mature body of him who is the head, that is Christ. So you know about speaking the truth in love. But how do you do that to a person who are really difficult and doesn't want to hear it and is going to be defensive and is going to be quite frankly a jerk about it, right? How do you do that? Well, a little differently than you would with a normal person. Because in a normal, healthy person, you speak the truth and they go, why do you think that? Help me to understand what you mean by that. And they help you clarify. And they get to the bottom of what it is you have to say. They think about it, they respond to it, and they might change whatever it is you're bringing up. Okay? Shock. It actually happens. And that is not how it is with a difficult person, right? It's a little bit different. So you have to approach this as first of all, you know who you're talking to. So you take that into consideration. And then you decide what the truth is that you need to say. Don't ever say anything difficult to a dysfunctional person that you don't really need to say, because you're just going to stir up trouble and you're just going to have a backlash and you're going to cause yourself stress. You have to have a lot of self-control over your mouth in a difficult relationship. A lot. Because you only want to say what you need to say. And what I mean, what you need to say, maybe you need to speak the truth about something because you need to know you said it. I am afraid that if you continue on this road, that you are going to die. You might need to say that. You might need to know for your peace of mind, if something happens, I said that. Okay, I let this person know this is a dangerous journey. I let this person know, no matter what you're doing, I love you. Okay, whatever you need to say. But when you say it, it doesn't get to go on for 2 hours. It doesn't get to go on for an hour. It doesn't get to be a speech. It's not a talk. It's what you need to say, and you're going to be direct, you're going to be concise, and you're going to be clear. Now, when you need to say something, and I'm not saying that always you need to say it super, super short, but as much as possible, when you need to say something to somebody you really want to have an impact, does it have more impact if it is a whole page, 5 paragraphs, takes 5 minutes, or if it's a concise, strong statement? I am worried that things are going to fall apart in your life. I can't continue this way. I'm not okay with the state of our marriage. I'm not going to be able to allow you to continue to live in our home if you continue drinking, if you continue to not work, and then walk away. How can that person get that out of their head after you've said it? No, because the last thing you say usually stays, right? So if you have something important to say, consider that. Consider making it direct, concise, and clear. Say it in as non-attacking way as possible. Defensive people, dysfunctional people are going to get upset with whatever you say. You're not going to be able to say it perfectly, and you can't control how they respond. But if you say it in the least attacking way as possible, you increase the chance that they will actually listen. So it could be saying, and I use something where you've heard iMessages, but I say, own the problem. I can't continue to see you living like this. I just can't handle you laying on my sofa every day playing video games. I feel like I'm going to be a screaming crazy woman. Like, I can't handle it. Like, you're a bum. That's all you want to do is lay in front of the TV. You're never going to grow up to be anything. You're going to end up on the street. No, I can't handle this anymore. I can't handle seeing this. I don't feel good about myself when I tolerate your abuse. I don't feel good about myself, Mom, when I talk to you and there's nothing but criticism. Own it. And then it's harder for the person to come back and attack you. And if this person says you're crazy, your feelings are crazy, you just say, I know, but I can't get away from them. That's how I feel. It's impossible for me I wish I could not feel this way. I wish I was okay with you lying on my sofa playing video games, using porn all night long, drinking and never working and yelling at me. Gosh, I wish I could live with that. But I can't. I just can't. I've tried really, really hard, but I can't. See? I'm exaggerating, but I'm presenting it in a way where you're saying, I just can't do this. Not, you are this, and that, but I can't do this. I just can't do it anymore. And then once you say what you need to say, you let go of the response. One of my early sponsors used the things she'd say, you put it out on the table and you walk away and you leave it there, okay? So you say what you need to say, you let the person deal with it, and you don't keep defending, justifying, explaining. Did you get it? Did you understand? Are you going to change? No, you just say it and you move on. And that is one powerful tool to speak the truth in love to a difficult person who does not want to hear you and understand, typically. The fifth one is to set boundaries to take care of yourself. Romans 14:5 says, one person considers one day more sacred than another considers every day alike. Each of them should be fully convinced in their own mind. Okay, boundaries are for you. They're about you. They're not about the other person. They're about what's your line, your limit, your needs. And when you're setting them, it's not about telling the other person what to do. It's about telling the other person what you need, what you are willing to accept, what you're not willing to accept. That's your boundary. So it is what you will and will not do, and sometimes is about what the other person does and doesn't do. So your boundary is, you've got a boundary that says, I'm participating in recovery. I'm going to my meeting every single time it's there, unless I'm sick. I'm going to commit to this step study. I will go to this step study. That's a boundary, okay? But then boundaries are sometimes about, oh, my kid won't get off my sofa, so what am I going to do about it? Kid, get off my sofa. Go get a job. Okay, Mom. Keeps playing the video game. Okay, so now what's my boundary? My boundary is, what will I tolerate in my home? Am I willing to allow my son to lay on my sofa every day and play video games and not work? That's the dilemma I didn't want to have to deal with. That's why I kept nagging him to change. But now I recognize it's not about him changing. It's not about me making him get off the sofa. It's not about making my husband not talk to me that way. It's not about making my mom stop criticizing me or making her stop talking about me to my siblings. My mom doesn't do that, but that's just an example. And it's not about those things, okay? What it's about is, I've got a problem. I've got a situation that I don't like. I've got something that I don't want to live with that's not okay for me, and what am I going to do? Well, the only thing that you have the power to do is to decide what you will or will not do about this. That's it. But you may have some limits on what your options are, but when we do the boundaries, we go through and there's like multiple options to each dilemma. It's like, whoa, I've got choices of things that I can do with that. I may not like all of them, but you do have choices. So that boundary is deciding, what am I willing to do and not willing to do? And that's kind of a basic question that you have to ask yourself when you're struggling with a boundary. And the answer is scary sometimes. Because if you really, really, really get down there and you say, I cannot accept this, live with this, and feel good about myself, I cannot do that. But that can be really scary. Like, I'm going to have to face some difficult things. I'm going to have to draw a really scary line. But if you're true to yourself, if you're standing up for what you know is right and who you are, once you know that that's your limit, that gives you that strength. And it helps you to have that courage, and it gives you the clarity of what you need, what you know that you need to do or not do. Because the purpose of a boundary is to manage your life and protect you. It's to hold you accountable, and it's for you to be a good steward of what God gave you. How can you be a good steward of what God gave you? You're responsible for what you do with money. If you're giving money to somebody who's using it for something that's not okay, like to buy drugs, then you're not being a good steward of your money. So you have to manage your own life, and boundaries are that thing that kind of gives you that protection. And here's an important thing to remember. You accept the things you don't like, a whole lot of things you don't like in your relationships and with people, things you wouldn't choose, things that really bug you, but you set boundaries with the unacceptable things, the things that are truly not okay, that you cannot go along with. Those are the things for boundaries. And if it takes you a while to figure out what those unacceptable things are, it's okay. It's okay. In the meantime, if you want, you may speak the truth about them. You may say, I don't know how much longer I can live with this. I'm trying, but I'm really struggling. Like, I can't stay in a marriage that is like this forever. Like, I'm not okay with the way you treat me. I'm really, you're not going to be able to live here forever and not work. Or I'm not going to keep giving you money if you're throwing the money away and wasting it on drugs, alcohol, frivolous spending, gambling, whatever it is, right? Or, so, I mean, these are things you say while you own the problem. You're saying that, but you haven't drawn a line. A line is, I will not allow you to live here if you continue this, or if you don't do that. I will not tolerate this behavior anymore. Those are boundaries. Those are lines. Once you say that, don't back down. So be ready to stick to that line. So it's going to take a while. So it's okay. In the meantime, you work on yourself. You work on getting stronger, clearer, and you can speak the truth in love about what it is that is going on without drawing a line. Number 6 is don't take personalities personally. Easy to say, right? It says, the boys grew up and Esau became a skillful hunter and man of the open country, while Jacob was content to stay at home among the tents. Genesis 25:27. Jacob and Esau, twins, right? Different personalities, and they didn't change. They're born that way, like you and everyone else in your life. They have a personality. That's who the person is. It's not about you. It's about the other person. I often ask people when they start telling me about somebody, I say, is that person like that with everyone? And they go, yeah. And I'll go, why are you taking it personally? Just look at the person and go, oh, if it walks like a duck, it's duck. Okay? That person's a sanguine. That person is a choleric. That person is a jerk, right? To everyone. That person is critical to everyone. Okay, well, she treats my sister a little bit better. Yeah, but she's still she's critical to everyone. She complains, maybe not about my sister, but she complains to my sister about everything. So you recognize that and you say, or this person is always depressed with the mental illness. Like, that is who the person is. You got to look at who the person is, who you're dealing with, and you can't take it personally. Doesn't mean that you can't decide how you're going to handle it, that you're going to set a boundary. You can't take it personally. It's not about you, everything that they do. So recognize that and just watch them and say, oh, there they go again. Okay? They're doing it again. And it will give you a very, very important tool, and that is detachment. It'll help you to detach from who the person is, not take it personal, not react to all of it, but to be separate and be able to separate yourself from what's going on and not react, but to choose how to act in response. And that is an absolute essential tool in the midst of dysfunction with anyone. The next one is another saying, and it's along the same lines, and it says, and this was one of my favorites, just because someone says it doesn't make it so. And that is a wonderful thing to say to yourself when you're panicking because somebody has said something and you're like, oh my gosh. Like a fluttering sparrow or a darting swallow, an undeserved curse will not land on its intended victim. So don't help it to land on you. Don't grab it and put it on your shoulder, because it's not going to do it unless you grab it and go, I'll take it. You don't have to. I had a friend who took this from that in my class that she became a friend, and she would say to her, she's so brave. She would say to her husband when he would say something, or a child or her mom, she would say, I don't accept your words. And then she wouldn't say anything, just in this very soft voice, she would say, I don't accept your words. And then if he said it again, she'd go, I don't accept your words. It was so powerful, right? Because we don't have to, just because someone doesn't agree with you doesn't mean you're wrong. Did you know that?
Yeah. Right.
Right? Because a lot of people, when they're not validated, they'll say, oh, well, that person said this, and they'll say to themselves, well, I must be wrong. I need to change my thought. No, you don't. Okay? Now, you can consider, hey, is that brilliant, dysfunctional person in front of me that's always critical and criticizing me? Could they be right this time? If you want to, you can. But you've got to remember that I don't have to change my thinking and my thought just because someone disagrees with me. Just because someone is upset with you doesn't mean you caused it. Do you know that? You can recognize this person is upset because they like to be upset or because they're always critical. When my husband goes through where he works very hard, when he gets really beat down over a while with work, okay, guaranteed he's going to go into, and it'll have to be a while, I'll watch him go into more of a critical thing. Well, he'll start to be more focused on me and like, what am I doing wrong? And I can see it, and it's just like, I'm not going to take that on. I'm not going to start thinking, oh, what am I doing? How do I need to change stuff? I'm going to go, oh, he's going into that bad place, and detach from it, right? And not waste all my time and energy figuring it out and trying to navigate it and adjust. It's super powerful. I've got a daughter who has a lot of problems, and physically and mentally, and right now she's having a really difficult time getting adjusted on medication. And it takes less than 5 minutes for her to be mad at me about something, even when I'm trying to help her, okay? Now, years ago, I would have walked away with my head spinning. What did I say wrong? What could I have said different? What could I have done? Because now she's mad again. I would have worried that she was mad. I would worry that she wasn't okay. And I don't do that anymore. I recognize I can ask myself, hey, is there something I did that, you know, if I lose it with her or lose my temper, or if I act irritated, yeah, I'm going to take responsibility for that. But when I'm doing it like I know I need to do, and she's reacting, I'm not going to take that away with me. I'm going to let that go. Okay? And that means that I continue doing whatever I would have done in spite of that, mentally, emotionally, and physically. Just because someone says it doesn't mean you need to convince him or her it's not accurate. Somebody else says something. My husband has a perception of me during that time that he's in that bad mood. I'm not going to try to convince him it's not true, because you know what? It's wasting energy, and it's not going to work. What happens when you try to argue with an irrational person, you get irrational. All right? So don't do it. You don't have to convince the other person they're wrong. You don't have to agree with them, change your own opinion. You don't have to take it on, and you don't have to convince them they're wrong. You can let people think what they want to think, even if they're upset with you, and let it go and walk away. And most of the time, it's either not going to change or if it'll pass. They'll figure it out. Let them do it. Why do you want to do it? Why do you want to take all that on? And the next one is de-escalate instead of escalating. It says, whoever is patient has great understanding, but one who is quick-tempered displays folly, Proverbs 14:29. When someone is upset, react calmly. When someone is upset, listen and try to understand. Okay? When someone is upset, don't try to confront or convince. Why? When they're upset, they're angry, they're yelling, they're in a mood, are they in their higher reasoning brain or their lower animal brain that doesn't reason and only attacks, fights, and flees, right? That's got to start looking at people that are angry and upset, even a child in the middle of a temper tantrum. You get down on the floor and you try to talk to this kid that's screaming, is not able to process your words because they're in the lower brain and all they're doing is like reacting on emotion. Adult temper tantrums are the same. They're reacting with emotion. You're not going to reason with them. So don't try. Try to, and then this isn't talking about somebody who's abusing you and screaming at you. This is talking about somebody who's in that place where they're upset and you're trying to respond and you're trying to hear what's going on. So you try to listen, try to figure it out, but you don't confront them or convince them. But there are times when somebody is upset where you can look past what's going on and they're upset about and figure out what they really need. You know the whole saying, don't get hungry, angry, lonely, tired, right? So you can sometimes look at somebody and go, what's going on? I think this person is really stressed out and really tired and really having a hard time. What do they need? Okay? There are times that my husband is just at his wit's end with something on the computer and he's frustrated about it and he's not patient when I'm trying to explain to him, and I'll just say, go away. I'll do it for you. That solves the problem, right? I'll take this off your hands. I'll take care of it. And recognizing that that person might really need that. And that's part of us being able to help in circumstances where somebody is struggling. And you've got to use this one with wisdom. But just know, sometimes even with a kid, sometimes if it's just, they're just completely out of control, and you can just try to say, what's really going on here? Do they need to be hugged? Do they need to listen? Are they just over this, can't handle this right now? Do they need a break? You know, what is it? And that's where you sometimes, that's another way of de-escalating a situation. Number 9, you can say yes to a feeling and no to behavior. Better a patient person than a warrior, one with self-control than one who takes the city. Proverbs 16:32. Feelings aren't right or wrong. Behavior can be right or wrong, acceptable or unacceptable. And feelings can be validated without approving the behavior. So you can recognize that someone is upset, is angry, is hurt, is worried, is any of those things, is afraid, but they don't get to freak out. They don't get to scream at you. They don't get to swear at you. They don't get to tell you that everything you've ever done is wrong. They don't get to scream at you and demand that you do something. That's not acceptable behavior. They don't get to throw things. They don't get to hit the wall. They don't get to break things. They don't get to threaten you. None of those things are okay for your child, for your adult child, for your parent, for your ex-spouse, for your spouse. None of those things are okay. So you can say no to the behavior, but I would love to listen to what is going on with you. I want to know how you're feeling, but I can't accept it like this. And it's the same thing when our kids come back and they want to talk to us about our dysfunction and the things that have happened in our home. I'm ready to listen to any of it, but you can't scream at me. You can't attack me. You can't swear at me. And when I tell you I need you to stop because that's all I can handle for today, please stop. So those are all ways of handling somebody who is really feeling strongly, not handling it well. You want to get to where you can hear the feeling if they can do it in a way that the behavior is okay. Does that make sense? Okay. Number 10, super important. Answer with short responses to end the conversation. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Proverbs 15:1. When you're dealing with somebody who is angry, attacking you, critical, raging, irritable, you answer with things like yes, no, maybe, okay, could be. Somebody who's who's abusive, somebody who's demanding that you do something. And again, they're in their lower brain. You're not going to reason with them. So you might say, maybe, I'll think about it. I'll get back to you. Or you might say, yes, and the conversation, no, I'll talk with you later. Or don't say anything at all. Sometimes not saying anything at all and just getting away from the conversation is the best option. You might come back to it later, or you might not be able to, but sometimes just not answering is the best way to end a conversation that's destructive, that's out of control, and not healthy. Okay, don't argue or defend your position to a defensive, difficult person, to an angry person, to a drunk person. The prudent keep their knowledge to themselves, but a fool's heart blurts out folly, Proverbs 12:23. There's a saying called don't jade. That means don't justify, don't argue, don't defend, and don't explain. When you're dealing with a narcissist, when you're dealing with an abuser, when you're dealing with somebody who's raging, somebody who's super critical, this is your slogan. Don't jade. Why? You can justify yourself to this person? Is that going to work? Are you going to argue with this person? People that like that, you'll never win an argument because they'll lie. Yeah. They'll go really low. If you're trying to do it with an integrity and you're not going to lie and you're not going to say mean things and you're not going to distort, you're not going to manipulate, are you going to win? No. So why do that? Don't defend yourself. They're not interested in hearing your defense. And the more you explain yourself, the more opportunities you give them to hook you and to tell you that, to show you that you're wrong and say things that are going to be hurtful. So super important. You're not going to convince them. So you ask yourself, is saying what I want to say worth the cost? You pay the cost. They don't. They don't usually walk away feeling bad or upset. They walk away mad at you. You walk away thinking, oh my gosh, I blew it again. Your head's spinning. You're trying to figure out what happened. You're trying to figure out all this stuff. And that's wasted time, wasted energy. 12, walk away when it's better than staying. Evildoers are trapped by their sinful talk, and so the innocent escape trouble, Proverbs 12:13. You want to walk away when you'll overreact and regret what you will say and do. You want to walk away when the situation is toxic, abusive, and or dangerous. And walk away when you need time to process before you react. See, remember, you're responsible for your responses. You're responsible for how you react to the other person before the Lord. You're not responsible for how they act. So you've got to say, do I need to walk away? Right? I'm sure you can already guess. I'm a reactor, right? I had a 15-year-old daughter who, for some reason, 1 year of her high school, decided she was going to wage war against me. She liked her dad, but she didn't like me. And she did this with me. Every time I'd tell her something to do, she'd walk up to my face this close and she'd go, no. Pretty brave girl, right? Okay, well, when you're this close to a kid who's telling you no, and you've already got a reactive relationship, there's a lot you can do that close. Okay? And there's a lot you don't want to do. So I had to learn with her, and this was one of the things I really worked hard on steps 6 and 7 with her, with working on my shortcomings and asking God to take away what I could not take away myself, which was to want to smack her and definitely to scream at her, which I did. I didn't smack her, but I did scream at her way too many times. And finally, I just got to, the minute that happens, I've just got to go, right? And you want to walk away when it's toxic too. That's when you can do cutoff. Okay, I can't be in this relationship when it's toxic to me or my family or dangerous. Okay, number 13, don't interfere with natural consequences. Galatians 6, 7, and 8 says, do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Whoever sows to please their flesh, from the flesh will reap destruction. Whoever sows to please the Spirit from the Spirit will reap eternal life. Cause and effect. Okay, God's setup for how things work. This is the world. Whether you're a Christian or not a Christian, this is the way it works. And unless you enable somebody and you interfere, with choice comes consequence. Everybody has choices. They make their own choices. They get to reap the consequences directly related to their choice. With the consequences, we hope comes learning. And we hope with learning comes change. Without these things, it will not happen. You cannot continue to bail someone out of irresponsible spending and think that they're going to learn how to responsibly spend their money. It will not happen. You cannot keep paying somebody's rent and think, okay, next month they're not going to do all this other stuff. They're going to pay their rent. No, they're not going to pay their rent. Okay? It's human nature. You have got to not intervene and step in and divert the consequences. It's super important and super hard. Really hard. Okay? Especially when it's our kids, because we don't want to see our kids suffer, and we don't want them to not like us and to threaten to never see us again. But we have to. We have to let them learn from their choices. Number 14, adjust your expectations. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but desire fulfilled is a tree of life. Proverbs 13:12. Wow, expectations. There's a saying that says expectations are an invitation to resentment. If you have an expectation and it doesn't happen, you're going to be resentful. But you're resentful because you had an expectation. Although expectations are not wrong, we all have expectations of what a person should do in a relationship. We have expectations of what an employee should do and our boss should do, and they're based on some reasoning and reality and maybe agreements. Expect our spouse to do certain things, but the problem comes in when a person doesn't do those things, and we know they're not going to do those things, but we continue to hope they'll do those things, right? And we continue to expect things from them that are unreasonable for that person. If you know somebody's drinking and every day you say, I hope they come home. They're going to come home not drinking tonight. And then they come home drinking and you're like, oh no, not another one. What are you doing? It's like you're doing this roller coaster of hope and change. Accept the reality of the circumstances. Match your expectations to reality to lessen your disappointment so you can take care of yourself. So you can know, hey, this is probably what's going to happen. I need to be prepared to take care of myself. I need plan B, right? Or I need to accept that this person is not capable of being my soulmate. And I'm going to stop expecting that and being disappointed and start making a life for myself and making the best out of whatever relationship we do have. Okay, those are reasonable expectations, and those help you to deal with a difficult person and go on with your life and not to be continually tied to the things that aren't happening. It is very important that you do that in a difficult relationship. But that does not equal tolerating whatever it is that comes your way. It just means that you decide what is the norm in this situation. I'm going to expect the norm. And then I'm going to make a plan of how to live with it. And 15, look inward before looking outward. It says each one should test their own actions, then they can take pride in themselves alone without comparing themselves to someone else, for each one should carry their own load. Galatians 6:4-5. We always look at ourselves, even in difficult relationships. We do want to look at ourselves. We want to take responsibility for what we do, but the important thing is that we don't take responsibility for what the other person does. When you tend to be codependent, when you've had a lot of difficult relationships, when you've grown up in a dysfunctional home and you've been blamed or you've been discounted and invalidated, the tendency is to take on too much. to take on the responsibility for other people's choices and feelings and moods, and we have to learn to let go of what we're not responsible for, and we have to take what we are responsible for. So learning that differentiation takes time. It takes sorting things out. It takes straightening out your scriptural understanding. It takes understanding where you start and the other person ends. It takes recognizing that they're blaming you, and that's where part of that comes from, is that they're blaming you for how they're feeling, and you've got to learn how to detach from that blame. You've got to look at your childhood. Was I the scapegoat of the family where they blamed me for everything and I felt responsible for everything and everyone? Okay, well, I'm continuing that in my adult life, but I'm going to stop that. I'm going to learn how not to take that on. So you want to be open to hearing truth from others, but don't automatically believe that someone else's perspective is more accurate than yours, especially if that person is difficult. Okay, you've got to recognize who it's coming from and what's going on with that person. So you can listen, but you gotta filter it. Okay, and then you have to make sure you don't take it all on. And the very last thing is practice radical acceptance. Have you heard that term, radical acceptance? You've heard acceptance for a long time, but now all of a sudden you're hearing radical acceptance from everywhere. Philippians 4:11 says, I'm not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances are. Now, I look at that scripture a little bit differently, and you know the context of that, the other scriptures around that. Paul is saying he's in need. Paul admits he's in need in those scriptures. He says, I've been with plenty and I've been without anything. And he even goes on in that scripture, in that section there, and he talks about, and there were times that nobody helped me except you guys, the people he's writing the letters to. You're the only ones that reached out. Everybody else abandoned me. And so I've learned that whether I'm in need and I'm miserable and I don't have what I need, or I've got everything I like, I've learned to figure out how to manage this, how to be content, how to accept that I'm in that situation, and to just be okay with that. That's basically radical acceptance. That's saying, I know what's going on, so it's not pretending you don't know, like, oh no, it's bliss, it's wonderful. No, that's not what we're doing, okay? We're always honest, we're always in touch with reality, and we're always recognizing what is going on. Now, what do you do with that? Once you open your eyes and you walk in truth and you see what's going on, you use radical acceptance. And radical acceptance means that you embrace reality as it is. Now, you look at it and you say, it is what it is. And the radical part is that it's the opposite of what we really like to do. Okay, it's the opposite. We really like to go, no, that's not okay. And we like to scream and rage against it and try to change it. And instead, it's just, it is what it is. And acceptance means you put out your hand, go look in the dictionary, and you take what's offered. The opposite of acceptance, no, not mine. I'm not in this difficult marriage. No. I'm going to go back in my mind 50 years and I'm going to say, I shouldn't have made this decision, and I'm going to stay there thinking about not making this decision. Hello, not helpful, right? Okay, no, instead, yep, I stayed in this marriage for all these years. I'm in this difficult marriage. Yep, I am. And you observe without strong emotion and judgment. So you get a little bit of detachment with that. Instead of going, I'm in this marriage still. No, you go, I'm in this marriage. And you don't judge, that's a horrible thing, or my kid's using drugs, that's a horrible thing. You just say, no, my kid is using drugs still. My kid's an addict. My parent is still a narcissist and I don't like being around him. Okay. That's without strong emotion and judgment. That's it. And then you stay in the moment. This is what I'm dealing with right now. When you radically accept it, It's peace. It brings you, if you can do it in the moment, I've done it. When I'm in the midst of something I absolutely hate and just go, stop. It is what it is right now. And I stop my thoughts and I don't judge it. I don't start getting all like emotional about it, and I just recognize it, and it's just this peace passes over you. And I used an example when I did a YouTube video on radical acceptance, and I just did it spontaneously. I said, it's like you're over in this dungy castle that you hate and you want to get out of it, and you desperately want to get out of this castle that you've been in. It's dry, it's cold, it's smelly, you're hungry, you hate being there. And there's a moat around the castle, and you're afraid of the moat. But there's a bridge over the moat. And that bridge is acceptance. And if you're in that place that you don't want to be, and you see that bridge, and all you have to do to get out of that horrible place is to walk across that bridge of acceptance to the other side where you accept instead of refuse and are fighting reality. Do you want to go? Do you want to walk across that bridge? Do you want to walk over to acceptance? It's a different place over there once you accept it. And then once you accept it, that's not it. It doesn't end there. You get to choose how to respond to it. Okay, I accept that it is what it is. I can't change this. Peace. Now, what do I do about it? What are my choices now that it is what it is and I've accepted it? Then you got choices. They may not be everything you want, may not be, well, I want to change that situation. Well, I don't know if there is a way to do it. Do it. If there isn't, go for one of your other choices. But that is a different way to live than fighting everything that comes to you and trying to force change and trying to make it different and going back in your head and spending all that time and energy on wishing it was different, wishing you made a different choice, wishing you did something different. No, that doesn't help. Okay? Radical acceptance. And then what? That is a powerful way to deal with difficult people and difficult circumstances that you don't like, and to deal with things that you don't like in your life. Get a cancer diagnosis. Radical acceptance. And then you make a decision. What treatment am I going to take? It's a very powerful concept. And it's scriptural. Okay? And Jesus did it in the Garden of Gethsemane. When he went over there and he was God, like, if you can take this cup from me, take it. And then finally he said, God said, no, I can't take it. And he goes, okay. Okay. And then he went forward and he did what he needed to do.
Thank you for listening to Change My Relationship. We hope you will subscribe to these podcasts and share them with your friends. Karla would love to hear from you. She welcomes ideas for future podcasts as well as your feedback on how the podcast have helped your life and relationships. You can email her at karla@changemyrelationship.com. For more information on Change My Relationship and Karla Downing's ministry, including her books, studies, devotionals, podcast, and YouTube videos, visit changemyrelationship.com.